The morning sun cast long shadows across the palace courtyard as Sarah Mitchell adjusted her daughter's wheelchair one final time. 8-year-old Emma sat quietly, her bright blue eyes taking in everything around her with the wonder that only children possess. Today was special. They were visiting the royal palace during the public tour, something Emma had been dreaming about for months. Emma had been born with cerebral palsy, a condition that affected her movement and posture. While her mind was sharp and her spirit unbreakable, her body required the support of a wheelchair and constant care from her devoted mother. Sarah had saved for nearly a year to afford this trip, wanting to give her daughter something magical to remember. The palace grounds were bustling with tourists from around the world. Families snapped photos, children pointed excitedly at the grand architecture, and everyone seemed caught up in the royal atmosphere. Sarah pushed Emma's wheelchair carefully through the crowd, making sure she had the best possible view of everything they passed. As they approached the main ceremonial area, Sarah noticed the increased security. Royal guards stood at attention, in their traditional uniforms, their faces serious and professional. A red velvet rope barrier marked the boundary between the public viewing area and the restricted royal grounds. Signs in multiple languages clearly indicated that crossing this line was strictly forbidden. Emma's eyes grew wide as she spotted something extraordinary. On the other side of the barrier, a small corgi puppy had wandered away from its handler. The little dog seemed lost and confused, whimpering softly as it looked around for familiar faces. Emma had always loved animals, and seeing the distressed puppy touched her heart deeply. "Mama, look at the little dog," Emma whispered, tugging at her mother's sleeve. "It's scared and alone." Sarah followed her daughter's gaze and saw the puppy, too. Her heart went out to the small animal, but she knew there was nothing they could do. The barrier was there for important security reasons, and crossing it would likely result in immediate removal from the premises or worse. "I see it, sweetheart," Sarah replied gently. "But we can't help. The guards will take care of it." However, the guards seemed focused on watching the crowd and maintaining their positions. None appeared to notice the small puppy's distress. Emma watched with growing concern as the little dog continued to wander aimlessly, its tiny cries becoming more desperate. Other tourists began to notice the situation as well. Some pointed and whispered among themselves while others tried to get the attention of the nearest guards. But the formal protocol and rigid structure of royal security meant that even well-intentioned gestures were met with stern looks and subtle headshakes. Emma's tender heart couldn't bear to watch the puppy's suffering any longer. Despite her physical limitations, she had always been determined and strong-willed. Her mother often said that Emma's disabilities had never defined her spirit. If anything, they had made her more compassionate and brave. "The doggy needs help, Mama," Emma said with quiet determination. "It's just a baby." Sarah knelt down beside her daughter's wheelchair, recognizing that look in Emma's eyes. It was the same expression she'd had when she insisted on learning to swim despite her condition, or when she'd refused to give up on riding a specially adapted bicycle. "Emma, honey, I know you want to help, but we can't cross that rope. It's against the rules and it could be dangerous." But Emma's attention was entirely focused on the distressed puppy. She could see that it was shivering now, probably cold, and definitely frightened. The little animal kept looking toward the crowd as if hoping someone would come to its rescue. The crowd around them had grown larger as word spread about the lost puppy. Camera phones were discreetly raised, though everyone knew that any sudden movements might alarm the security detail. The situation was becoming more tense by the minute. Emma made a decision that would change everything. With a strength that surprised even her mother, she began to maneuver her wheelchair forward. The electric motor hummed quietly as she approached the red velvet barrier. "Emma, no," Sarah called out, but her daughter was already in motion. The nearest royal guard, a tall man named Officer James Thompson, noticed the movement immediately. His training kicked in, and he stepped forward with the intention of politely but firmly redirecting the child back to the approved viewing area. But something made him pause. Perhaps it was the determination in Emma's young face, or the way she was looking not at the palace or the ceremony, but at the small, helpless animal beyond the barrier. Officer Thompson had been a royal guard for over 15 years, and he'd seen every type of security situation imaginable. But he'd never encountered anything quite like this. Emma's wheelchair came to a stop right at the edge of the barrier. She looked up at Officer Thompson with pleading eyes that held no fear, only compassion for the suffering puppy. "Please, sir," she said in her clear, sweet voice. "The little dog is scared. It needs someone to help it." The crowd had fallen silent, everyone watching to see what would happen next. Other guards had noticed the situation and were moving closer, unsure of how to handle this unprecedented scenario. Officer Thompson found himself in an impossible position. His duty was clear: maintain the security barrier and ensure no unauthorized personnel entered the restricted area. But looking down at this brave little girl who was asking not for herself but for a helpless animal, he felt something shift inside him. The puppy's cries grew louder, and Emma's wheelchair creaked slightly as she leaned forward, her small hands gripping the armrests. The tension in the air was palpable as everyone waited to see what the Royal Guard would do. Time seemed to slow as Officer Thompson made a choice that would soon touch hearts around the world. Officer Thompson knelt down to Emma's eye level, his serious expression softening as he looked into her determined face. In that moment, he saw past the wheelchair, past the barriers, and straight into the heart of a child who simply wanted to help a creature in need. "What's your name, little miss?" he asked gently, his voice carrying the authority of his position, but tempered with unexpected kindness. "Emma," she replied without hesitation. "Emma Mitchell. And that puppy over there is crying because it can't find its family." The crowd watched in amazement as this seasoned Royal Guard, trained to maintain strict protocol under all circumstances, found himself moved by an 8-year-old's pure compassion. Officer Thompson glanced at his colleagues, who were positioned at various points around the ceremonial area, all watching the unprecedented interaction. "Emma," he said carefully, "you understand that this rope is here for very important reasons, don't you? We have rules we must follow to keep everyone safe." Emma nodded solemnly. "Yes, sir. Mama explained the rules to me. But sometimes, don't rules need to change when someone needs help? My teacher says that being kind is the most important rule of all." Sarah stood frozen behind her daughter, her heart racing as she watched this extraordinary conversation unfold. She wanted to intervene, to pull Emma back to safety, but something told her to wait and see what would happen. Other tourists had pulled out their phones, though they kept them low and discreet, sensing that they were witnessing something truly special. The puppy's whimpering grew more distressed, and it began to wander closer to a decorative fountain. Officer Thompson realized that the small animal could potentially hurt itself if it fell into the water or became more panicked. "Emma, if I were to help that puppy, what do you think would be the best way to do it?" he asked, genuinely curious. About her perspective, Emma's face lit up with hope. "Well, first someone needs to let it know it's safe, then pick it up very gently because it's just a baby. My neighbor has a dog, and she says you have to be calm and speak softly so you don't scare them more." Officer Thompson was struck by the wisdom in her simple words. Here was a child who couldn't walk, yet she understood instinctively how to approach a frightened animal with patience and gentleness. He looked again at his fellow guards, catching the eye of his supervisor, Captain Williams. Captain Williams had been watching the entire interaction from his position near the palace steps. He was a man who had served the royal family for over 20 years, maintaining the highest standards of security and protocol. But he was also a father of 3, and he recognized something profound happening at the barrier. The crowd held its breath as Captain Williams approached. Everyone expected him to firmly redirect Emma back to the public area and remind his officer of proper procedures. Instead, he walked straight to Officer Thompson and whispered something in his ear. Officer Thompson's face showed surprise, then a slow smile spread across his features. He turned back to Emma with renewed purpose. "Emma, I've just received special permission to ask for your help with a very important royal mission. You see, that puppy belongs to one of the palace staff, and it's gotten itself into quite a predicament. Would you be willing to assist us in helping it feel safe?" Emma's eyes grew as wide as saucers. "Really, you want my help?" "Absolutely. But first we need to make sure you can cross this barrier safely. Would it be all right if I helped guide your wheelchair? Sarah stepped forward, her voice shaking with emotion. Officer, are you sure this is okay? I don't want Emma to get in trouble or cause any problems for you. Captain Williams addressed Sarah directly. Ma'am, sometimes the most important security decisions aren't about following rules exactly as written, but about doing what's right. Your daughter has shown more genuine concern for that animal than anyone else here today. We'd be honored to have her help. The crowd began to murmur with approval and amazement. Several people wiped tears from their eyes as they watched the guards carefully lift the red velvet rope, creating a small opening for Emma's wheelchair. Officer Thompson positioned himself behind the wheelchair while Captain Williams walked alongside, ensuring Emma's safety with every movement. The other guards maintained their positions but watched with smiles on their normally stoic faces. As they crossed the barrier, Emma sat up straighter in her wheelchair, suddenly aware of the magnitude of what was happening. She was in a restricted area of the royal palace, not as a trespasser, but as an invited helper on an important mission. The puppy was now near the fountain, looking even smaller and more lost against the grand backdrop of the palace architecture. Emma's heart went out to the tiny creature, and she knew exactly what needed to be done. Can we move slowly? She asked Officer Thompson. If we go too fast, we might scare him more. Of course, Emma. You're in charge of this rescue mission. As they approached the puppy, Emma began speaking in the softest, most gentle voice. Hello, little one. Don't be afraid. We're here to help you find where you belong. The puppy's ears perked up at the sound of her voice, and it stopped wandering to look directly at Emma. Something about her calm presence seemed to comfort the frightened animal. What happened next would become a moment that touched millions of hearts around the world as cameras captured the extraordinary scene of compassion overcoming protocol and love conquering fear. The puppy took a tentative step toward Emma's wheelchair, its small tail giving the faintest wag. Emma remained perfectly still, allowing the frightened animal to approach at its own pace. Her experience with her own physical challenges had taught her the importance of patience in letting others feel safe and in control. That's right, sweet puppy, Emma whispered, her voice barely audible to the watching crowd. You can trust me. I know what it's like to feel scared sometimes. Officer Thompson watched in amazement as the puppy continued to move closer to Emma. In all his years of service, he had never seen anything quite like this. The child's natural ability to connect with the frightened animal was remarkable, and her calm demeanor was having a visible effect on everyone present. The crowd behind the barrier had grown significantly, with people stopping their tours to witness this extraordinary scene. Tour guides whispered explanations to confused visitors, while children pressed against their parents' legs to get a better view. Cell phones continued to record discreetly, capturing what many would later describe as a moment of pure magic. Captain Williams kept a watchful eye on the entire situation, balancing his security responsibilities with his recognition that something truly special was unfolding. He had already made the decision to allow this unprecedented breach of protocol, but he remained alert to ensure everyone's safety. The puppy was now just a few feet from Emma's wheelchair. Its initial panic had subsided, replaced by curiosity about this gentle girl who spoke so kindly. Emma slowly extended her hand, palm up, allowing the puppy to catch her scent. Hello there, little prince, she said with a soft giggle. Are you lost? Don't worry, we'll help you find your way home. The puppy sniffed Emma's outstretched fingers, then took another step closer. Emma's face glowed with joy as the small animal finally reached her wheelchair. Without any fear, the puppy placed its front paws on the wheelchair's footrest, looking up at Emma with trusting dark eyes. Oh, you are just the sweetest thing, Emma cooed, gently stroking the puppy's soft fur. See? You're safe now. We're going to take good care of you. Sarah watched from beyond the barrier, tears streaming down her face. She had seen her daughter's compassion many times before, but watching Emma bring comfort to this frightened animal while surrounded by royal guards and amazed spectators filled her with overwhelming pride. Officer Thompson knelt beside the wheelchair, carefully observing the interaction between Emma and the puppy. You have a real gift with animals, Emma. This little one seems to trust you completely. Emma beamed at the compliment. My mama says that when you've needed help yourself, you understand better how to help others. I think animals can sense when you really care about them. The puppy had now climbed partially onto Emma's lap, settling comfortably against her as if it had found exactly where it belonged. Emma wrapped her arms gently around the small animal, providing the security and warmth it had been seeking. At that moment, a palace staff member came hurrying across the courtyard. Margaret Chen was the head groundskeeper, and her face showed both relief and concern as she approached the group. "Oh, thank goodness," she exclaimed, slightly out of breath. "I've been looking everywhere for Biscuit. He escaped from his pen during the gardening work, and I was terrified something had happened to him." Captain Williams stepped forward to explain the situation. "Ms. Chen, this young lady noticed Biscuit's distress and helped us locate him safely. Emma here has quite a way with animals." Margaret looked at Emma with gratitude and amazement. "You found him? Oh, my dear, thank you so much. Biscuit belongs to the head gardener's family, and he's still just a puppy. He must have been so frightened." Emma gently stroked Biscuit's fur as the puppy dozed peacefully in her arms. He wasn't scared once he knew someone cared about him. He just needed to feel safe. The wisdom in Emma's simple words struck everyone present. Here was a child who understood instinctively that fear could be overcome with compassion, that trust could be earned through gentleness, and that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could make the biggest difference. Margaret knelt beside Emma's wheelchair, her eyes moist with emotion. "You know, Emma, Biscuit has been having a hard time adjusting to his new home here at the palace. He's been nervous and skittish with most people, but look at him now. He's completely relaxed. With you." Indeed, the puppy had fallen asleep in Emma's arms, his tiny body rising and falling with each peaceful breath. The crowd watched in silent wonder at the beautiful scene. A little girl in a wheelchair, holding a rescued puppy, surrounded by royal guards who had chosen compassion over rigid protocol. Officer Thompson looked at his watch and realized that the official ceremony would be beginning soon. Other dignitaries and officials would be arriving and the area would need to be cleared, but he found himself reluctant to end this magical moment. "Emma," he said gently, "we're going to need to return Biscuit to Ms. Chen soon and help you get back to your mother. But I want you to know that what you did today was truly special." Emma looked up at him with her bright eyes. "Will Biscuit be okay? Will someone make sure he doesn't get scared again?" Margaret smiled warmly. "I promise you, Emma, Biscuit will be very well cared for. And thanks to you, I think he'll be much braver from now on. Sometimes all we need is one person to show us kindness to help us feel strong." As the moment drew to a close, none of them could have imagined how far-reaching the impact of Emma's simple act of compassion would be, or how many hearts around the world would soon be touched by what had happened at the palace that day. As Margaret gently lifted the sleeping puppy from Emma's arms, Biscuit stirred and looked back at the little girl with what could only be described as gratitude. Emma smiled and whispered, "Be brave, little prince. You're going to have a wonderful life here." Officer Thompson began to guide Emma's wheelchair back toward the barrier, but before they reached it, Captain Williams made an unexpected announcement that would change everything. "Ladies and gentlemen," he called out to the gathered crowd, his voice carrying the authority of his position but also warmth that surprised everyone. "Today we have all witnessed something extraordinary. This young lady, Emma Mitchell, has reminded us all of what true courage and compassion look like." The crowd began to clap, slowly at first, then building to enthusiastic applause that echoed across the palace courtyard. Emma looked around in wonder, not fully understanding why everyone was clapping for her. She had simply done what felt right in her heart, but Captain Williams wasn't finished. "In recognition of Emma's exceptional kindness and bravery, I would like to extend a special invitation. Emma, would you and your mother like to join us for a private tour of the palace gardens? We have someone very special who would like to meet you." Sarah gasped from her position at the barrier. A private tour? She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Emma's eyes grew wide with excitement, but she remained characteristically thoughtful. "Would Biscuit be able to come too?" she asked. "I want to make sure he's really okay." Margaret Chen, who was still holding the puppy, laughed with delight. I think that could be arranged. After all, you two seem to have formed quite a bond. As Officer Thompson helped Emma and her wheelchair navigate back across the barrier to reunite with her mother, the crowd continued to watch with fascination. Many people were openly crying, moved by the simple purity of what they had witnessed. Sarah embraced her daughter with trembling arms. "Emma, sweetheart, I am so incredibly proud of you. But you gave me quite a scare when you crossed that barrier." Emma looked up at her mother with innocent confusion. "But Mama, the puppy needed help. Sometimes you have to be brave even when you're scared, right? Isn't that what you always tell me?" Sarah realized that her daughter was absolutely right. Emma faced challenges every single day with courage and determination, never allowing her disability to stop her from caring about others or standing up for what was right. Captain Williams approached the Mitchell family with a genuine smile. "Mrs. Mitchell, your daughter has shown remarkable character today. The invitation for the private tour comes directly from the highest levels of palace administration. They were deeply moved by what happened here, as they prepared for the private tour." Word of Emma's story had already begun to spread beyond the palace walls. Several tourists had shared videos and photos on social media, and the hashtag #EmmaAndBiscuit was starting to trend. The simple story of a little girl's compassion was touching hearts around the world. The private tour began in the famous Rose Garden, where Emma marveled at the thousands of blooming flowers. Margaret Chen walked alongside them, carrying Biscuit, who seemed much calmer and happier than he had been earlier. The puppy kept looking toward Emma, as if checking to make sure his rescuer was still nearby. "These gardens have been here for over 300 years, Margaret explained as they strolled through the perfectly manicured pathways. "They've seen kings and queens, prime ministers and presidents, but I don't think they've ever seen anyone quite as special as you, Emma." Emma was fascinated by everything she saw, asking thoughtful questions about the different plants and flowers. Her natural curiosity and genuine interest impressed everyone in their small group. Officer Thompson, who had remained with them as their security escort, found himself learning things about the gardens he had never known despite working at the palace for years. As they rounded a corner near the famous fountain courtyard, they encountered someone unexpected. Lady Catherine Pemberton, the Queen's private secretary, was waiting for them with a warm smile. She was known throughout the palace for her efficiency and formal demeanor, but today her expression was soft and welcoming. "You must be Emma, lady," Catherine said, approaching the wheelchair with genuine warmth. "I've heard quite a lot about you in the past hour. Your act of kindness has touched many hearts here at the palace." Emma looked up at the elegant woman with curiosity. "Are you a princess?" she asked innocently, causing everyone to chuckle. "No, dear, I'm not a princess, but I work for some very important people who wanted me to meet you personally. They've asked me to give you something special." Lady Catherine produced a beautiful wooden box with the royal seal embossed on the top. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a small silver pendant shaped like a heart, with the words "Courage and Compassion" engraved in elegant script. "This pendant is given only to individuals who demonstrate exceptional bravery and kindness," Lady Catherine explained. "There have been very few recipients over the years, and you are by far the youngest." Emma touched the pendant gently, her eyes shining with wonder. "It's beautiful, but I just helped a puppy. Anyone would have done the same thing." "Lady," Catherine knelt down to Emma's level. "My dear child, that's exactly what makes you so special. You don't realize how rare it is to find someone who puts compassion before rules, who sees need before barriers. What you did today will be remembered for a very long time." As if on cue, Biscuit wiggled in Margaret's arms and managed to lick Emma's hand, causing her to giggle with delight. The puppy had clearly not forgotten who had rescued him from his frightening ordeal. The afternoon continued with more wonders than Emma could have ever imagined, but the greatest surprise was yet to come. As they prepared to conclude the tour, Lady Catherine received a message on her phone that made her smile with excitement. "Emma, I have one more surprise for you, if you're not too tired from our adventure today." Emma's eyes sparkled with anticipation, wondering what other magical experiences this extraordinary day might bring. Lady Catherine led their small group through a side entrance into the palace itself. down corridors lined with magnificent portraits and priceless artwork. Emma's wheelchair moved smoothly over the polished marble floors as she craned her neck to take in the splendor surrounding her. "Where are we going?" Emma whispered to her mother, overwhelmed by the grandeur of the palace interior. Before Sarah could respond, they stopped before an ornate door guarded by 2 additional officers. Lady Catherine spoke quietly to the guards, who nodded respectfully and opened the door to reveal a smaller, more intimate sitting room decorated in soft blues and golds. "Emma," Lady Catherine said with barely contained excitement, "there's someone who has been following your story today and insisted on meeting you personally." The door opened wider, and in walked a woman whose presence immediately commanded attention yet radiated warmth and kindness. Emma recognized her instantly from the pictures she'd seen in books and on television. It was Her Royal Highness, the Princess of Wales. Emma's mouth opened in amazement, and for the first time that day she seemed truly speechless. Sarah gasped and automatically reached for Emma's hand, both of them overwhelmed by this incredible turn of events. The princess approached Emma's wheelchair with a genuine smile, wearing a simple but elegant blue dress, and speaking in a voice that was both regal and remarkably down-to-earth. "Hello, Emma. I'm Catherine, and I've been hearing the most wonderful things about you today. I hope you don't mind that I asked to meet you." Emma finally found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "You're really a princess. A real princess." "I am indeed," the princess laughed gently, kneeling down to Emma's eye level just as Officer Thompson had done earlier. "But more importantly, you're really a hero. A real hero." Emma shook her head modestly. "I'm not a hero. I just helped a scared puppy." "Emma, can I tell you a secret?" the princess said, moving closer. "The very best heroes are the ones who don't think they're heroes at all. They're the people who see someone in need and help without thinking about themselves first." At that moment, Margaret Chen appeared in the doorway, still carrying Biscuit, who had awakened from his nap and was looking around curiously at his elegant surroundings. The princess's face lit up when she saw the puppy. "And this must be the famous Biscuit. May I meet him as well?" Margaret approached carefully, and Biscuit, seeming to sense the importance of the moment, was on his best behavior as the princess gently stroked his soft fur. "You know, Emma, I have 3 children and they love animals just as much as you do. They're going to be so excited when I tell them about your brave rescue today." Emma's eyes grew wide with wonder. "You'll really tell them about me?" "Absolutely. In fact, I'd like to do something more than that if it's all right with your mother." The princess looked up at Sarah, who nodded eagerly, still hardly believing this was really happening. "Emma, we'd like to invite you to become a junior ambassador for our Children's Compassion Initiative. It's a program that encourages young people to show kindness and help others in their communities." Emma looked confused. "What would I have to do?" The princess smiled. "Just keep being exactly who you are. Keep showing kindness to those who need it, whether they're people or animals. And maybe, when you're ready, you could help us teach other children about the importance of compassion." Officer Thompson, who had remained respectfully silent during this royal encounter, stepped forward slightly. "Your Royal Highness, if I may, Emma also taught us something important today about the value of flexibility in our protocols when compassion calls for it." The princess nodded thoughtfully. "You're absolutely right, Officer Thompson. Sometimes the most important rules aren't written in any handbook. They're written in our hearts." Biscuit chose that moment to wiggle out of Margaret's arms and trot directly over to Emma's wheelchair, where he sat down and looked up at her expectantly. Everyone in the room laughed at the puppy's obvious preference for his rescuer. "I think Biscuit has made his choice about his favorite person," the princess observed with amusement. "Emma, I have a feeling you're going to have a very special friend here at the palace from now on." Emma reached down to pet Biscuit, who closed his eyes contentedly under her gentle touch. "Does this mean I can visit him sometimes?" "I think we can arrange that," Lady Catherine interjected with a smile. "After all, every junior ambassador needs to check on their rescue projects." The princess spent another 20 minutes talking with Emma about her interests, her school, and her dreams. She was particularly impressed when Emma mentioned that, She wanted to become a veterinarian someday so she could help animals who were sick or scared. That's a wonderful goal, Emma. And after seeing how naturally you connected with Biscuit today, I have no doubt you'll be an excellent veterinarian. As their time together drew to a close, the princess had one final surprise. She presented Emma with a specially commissioned children's book about kindness and courage, with a personal inscription on the first page that read, "To Emma, who showed us all what true bravery looks like. With admiration and best wishes, Catherine." This book tells stories about children from around the world who have shown extraordinary kindness, the princess explained. I think you'll enjoy reading about them, and I hope you'll remember that your story belongs right alongside theirs. Emma clutched the book to her chest, her eyes shining with tears of joy. Thank you so much. This has been the most amazing day of my whole life. It's been amazing for all of us, Emma. You've reminded us why kindness matters so much. As they prepared to leave, Emma had one last question for the princess. Will you tell Biscuit that I'll think about him every day? The princess promised she would, and as their extraordinary visit came to an end, none of them could have imagined that Emma's story was about to reach millions of people around the world, inspiring countless acts of kindness and changing lives in ways they never could have expected. Within hours of leaving the palace, Emma's story had spread across the internet like wildfire. The videos and photos captured by tourists showed the remarkable moment when royal guards chose compassion over protocol, and the images of Emma holding the rescued puppy melted hearts around the world. News outlets picked up the story with headlines like, 8-year-old's act of kindness moves royal family, and Girl in Wheelchair teaches palace guards about true courage. But for Emma and her mother Sarah, the attention was almost overwhelming as they tried to process everything that had happened. Back home in their small apartment, Emma sat at the kitchen table, carefully turning the pages of the book the princess had given her. Each story was about children who had made a difference through simple acts of kindness, and Emma was beginning to understand that what she had done was truly special. Mama, she said thoughtfully, do you think other kids will really want to hear about what happened with Biscuit? Sarah sat down beside her daughter, still emotional from the day's events. Sweetheart, I think children everywhere need to hear your story. You showed everyone that being different doesn't mean being less capable of making a difference. The phone had been ringing constantly since they arrived home. Local news stations wanted interviews, and Emma's school principal had called to congratulate her. But Sarah was careful to protect Emma from too much attention, making sure her daughter had time to rest and process the extraordinary day. 3 days later, Emma received her first letter from a child inspired by her story. It came from a 7-year-old boy named Marcus in Australia, who had cerebral palsy like Emma. His mother had read him the news story, and Marcus had dictated a letter saying that Emma's courage made him feel brave about starting at a new school. More letters followed from children around the world. A girl in Japan wrote about how Emma's story inspired her to volunteer at an animal shelter. A boy in Canada started a kindness club at his school after hearing about Emma's compassion for Biscuit. Each letter touched Emma deeply and helped her understand the ripple effect of her actions. 2 weeks after the palace visit, Lady Catherine called with exciting news. The royal family wanted to feature Emma's story in their annual Children's Compassion Report, and they were planning a special ceremony to officially welcome her as their youngest junior ambassador. But the most heartwarming development came from an unexpected source. Margaret Chen called to tell them that Biscuit had been thriving since his rescue, and his behavior had improved dramatically. The little puppy was calmer, more confident, and had become something of a celebrity among the palace staff. I truly believe that Emma's kindness changed something fundamental in Biscuit, Margaret explained to Sarah over the phone. It's as if her compassion gave him the confidence he needed to feel secure in his new home. Even more touching was Margaret's next revelation. The head gardener, Biscuit's owner, had decided to train the puppy as a therapy dog specifically to visit children with disabilities in hospitals and care facilities. Biscuit's gentle nature and his connection with Emma had shown everyone his potential to bring comfort to other children who needed emotional support. Emma was delighted when she heard this news, So Biscuit will be helping other kids who are scared or sad, just like I helped him when he was scared? Exactly like that, sweetheart, Sarah confirmed, marveling at her daughter's ability to see the beautiful symmetry in the situation. A month. After the palace incident, Emma attended her first official event as a junior ambassador. The ceremony was held at a children's hospital, where she met young patients and their families. Many of the children had seen her story on the news and were excited to meet the girl who had helped the royal puppy. Emma moved through the hospital ward in her wheelchair, stopping to talk with each child she met. Her natural empathy and understanding of what it meant to face physical challenges allowed her to connect with the young patients in a way that surprised even the hospital staff. "I was scared when I first came to the hospital too," she told a 6-year-old girl who was preparing for surgery. "But the doctors and nurses here are like the royal guards. They might seem serious, but they really care about helping you feel safe." The highlight of the hospital visit came when a special guest arrived. Biscuit, now wearing a small blue vest identifying him as a therapy dog in training, trotted into the children's ward alongside Margaret Chen. The reunion between Emma and the puppy was emotional for everyone present. Biscuit immediately went to Emma's wheelchair, his tail wagging furiously as he recognized his rescuer. But what amazed the hospital staff was how quickly he adapted to his new role. Under Margaret's guidance, Biscuit gently interacted with each child, seeming to sense who needed extra comfort and attention. "Look how calm he is with everyone," observed Dr. Patricia Williams, the hospital's chief pediatrician. "It's remarkable how this puppy has developed such therapeutic instincts." Emma's initial act of compassion seems to have unlocked something special in him. Throughout the afternoon, Emma watched with pride as Biscuit brought smiles to children who hadn't laughed in days. She realized that her moment of bravery at the palace had created something much bigger than she had ever imagined. A ripple effect of kindness that was touching lives far beyond what she could have dreamed. 6 months later, Emma's story had inspired the creation of the Barrier Breakers program, an international initiative encouraging children with disabilities to pursue their dreams and help others. The program, supported by the royal family and numerous charities, provided resources and recognition for young people who showed exceptional courage and compassion. Emma became the program's first official spokesperson, traveling to schools and events to share her message that everyone, regardless of their physical abilities, could make a meaningful difference in the world. Her speeches were simple but powerful, always emphasizing that kindness was the most important strength anyone could possess. At one particularly memorable school assembly, a teacher asked Emma what advice she would give to children who felt different or left out. Emma's response became the motto for the Barrier Breakers program. Being different isn't something to hide from or be sad about. It's something that helps you understand other people who need help. When you know what it feels like to be scared or left out, you get really good at helping others feel included and safe. Biscuit graduated from his therapy dog training with exceptional marks and became a permanent fixture at the children's hospital. His transformation from a frightened, lost puppy to a confident therapy animal was featured in veterinary journals and animal behavior studies. Researchers noted that the early intervention of Emma's compassionate rescue had been crucial in shaping his ability to trust and connect with humans. 2 years after that fateful day at the palace, Emma received an invitation that took her breath away. The Queen herself requested a private audience with the girl whose simple act of kindness had created such positive change in the world. The meeting took place in a small, private room in the palace, far from the public areas where Emma's adventure had begun. The Queen, regal yet warm, spoke with Emma about her work as a junior ambassador and the impact she had made on countless lives. "Your Majesty," Emma said during their conversation, "I still don't understand why helping one scared puppy became such a big thing. I just did what felt right." The Queen smiled knowingly. "My dear Emma, that's exactly why it became such a big thing. In a world where people often hesitate to help because of rules or fear or uncertainty, you showed that love and compassion should always come first. You reminded everyone that the most important barriers to break are the ones in our own hearts." As Emma left the palace that day, she reflected on how much her life had changed since that morning when she first saw a frightened puppy beyond a red velvet rope. She had learned that one moment of courage could create endless moments of joy for others, and that the greatest adventures often began with the simplest acts of love. Today, Emma continues her work as an advocate for children with disabilities and animal welfare. Biscuit, now a senior therapy dog, still visits the children's hospital regularly, bringing comfort to new generations of young patients. And somewhere in the palace gardens, a red velvet rope still marks the boundary between public and private spaces. But everyone who works there remembers the day when a little girl taught them that the most important boundaries are the ones we choose to cross in service of others. Emma's story serves as a timeless reminder that heroes come in all forms, that courage has nothing to do with physical ability, and that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change the world in the most extraordinary ways.